At the start, it felt like the best thing that had ever happened to you. The attention was total. They called you their soulmate almost immediately. The gifts, the texts all day, the "I've never felt this way about anyone." The future planned out in the first few weeks. It was intoxicating. Because who doesn't want to be adored like that? And if it later turned cold or controlling, and you found yourself aching to get back to how it was at the beginning, this one is for you. Because that overwhelming, too good to be true beginning can itself be a tactic. It's called love bombing, and learning to see it is one of the most useful things on this whole channel. Today, what love bombing actually is, how to tell it apart from real, healthy intensity, because they can look alike at first, and how to protect yourself without becoming someone who can't be loved. Naming it is how it loses its power. The careful note, as always, I'm not diagnosing anyone, and not every whirlwind romance is a trap. Sometimes two people just fall hard and fast, and it's wonderful and real. Love bombing is the pattern, intensity used as a tool to fast-track control. And the difference shows up in what happens next, which we'll get to. Here's the mechanism. Love bombing floods you with affection, attention, and future talk so fast and so completely that you bond deeply before you've actually had time to know the person. And that speed is not an accident, it's the function. Because a deep bond formed in 2 weeks is a bond built on a fantasy, not on real knowledge of who they are. And once you're bonded to the fantasy, you'll tolerate an enormous amount of bad behavior later, chasing the high of those first few weeks, trying to earn your way back to the person you thought you met. So here's the one thing I want you to carry out of this video. Real intimacy is built slowly, because it's built on actually knowing someone. When the intensity dramatically outruns the knowing, the intensity is doing a job, and the job is usually control. That single distinction is the closeness keeping pace with the actual knowing, or wildly outrunning it, is your best early tell, and it's one almost nobody is taught to check. Let me give you what love bombing tends to look like, so you can recognize it in real time. The first sign is the speed and the totality. Declarations of love or soulmate, talk of marriage, or moving in within days or a couple of weeks. An amount of certainty about you that they couldn't possibly have yet because they don't actually know you yet. Real feeling this early is possible, but it stays humble about how much it still has to learn. Love bombing is certain. The second sign is that it can feel like pressure wearing the mask of romance. The constant contact that gets tense if you don't reply fast enough. The grand gestures that come with a subtle expectation of matching devotion. The "I've never felt this way, don't you feel it too?" That makes hesitation feel like a betrayal. Real affection gives you room. Love bombing, underneath the sweetness, tends to push. And the third sign, the one that confirms it, is what happens when you set a small boundary. If you say, "I can't talk tonight," or "let's slow down a little," watch the reaction. Healthy intensity says, "Of course, take your time." Love bombing tends to sulk, guilt trip, get wounded, or cool off because the affection was partly a transaction and you just declined to pay. That reaction is the fantasy showing its edges. So, how do you protect yourself without armoring up against real love? The first defense is to let time be your test. You don't have to reject the affection. You just refuse to speed up on their timeline. Keep your own pace. Real connection has nothing to lose by going slower. It only deepens. A tactic, though, needs the speed and will get impatient with your calm. Time is a filter that lets the real thing through and catches the fake. The second defense is to keep your life while you fall. Love bombing works partly by consuming you. Suddenly they're your whole world and your friends barely see you. So on purpose, don't disappear. Keep your friendships, your routines, your outside eyes. The people who knew you before this started are the ones who will gently say, "Hey, this is moving really fast," and you want to be able to hear them. The third defense is to test with a small boundary, deliberately, early. You don't have to announce it. Just at some point, don't be instantly available. Take a night for yourself. Say a gentle no to something small, and then just watch how they handle it. Their response to your first small no will tell you more about the next 2 years than any grand declaration ever could. Now let me be honest about the hard part. This one hurts because if you were love bombed, part of you still misses that beginning. It felt incredible, and it's painful to consider it wasn't fully real. Wanting to be adored isn't foolish. It's human. The point isn't to distrust anyone who's kind to you. That's a lonely way to live. It's just to let closeness earn itself over time so that when someone is wonderful to you, you can actually trust it. because it held up. And the important line, love bombing is often the opening phase of a cycle that later turns controlling. The intense high, then devaluation, then the pull back to the high. If you find yourself in that cycle and can't seem to get out, real confidential help exists. In immediate crisis, call or text 988 to talk it through safely. The National Domestic Violence Hotline is 1-800-799-7233. You deserve a love that's steady, not one you have to keep chasing back to. So the next time it feels almost too good to be true, too fast, too certain, don't panic and don't run. Just slow it down and watch. Real love will wait for you. And remember, this is education, not therapy, and not a diagnosis of anyone, just a way to read the pattern. Next video, the channel's namesake, the gray rock method itself, the full guide to becoming so unrewarding to provoke that a manipulator loses interest. Subscribe so it's there when you need it.